Walter Shewhart in 1939 described how variation during creation lead to variations of the output. Thus, we must uncover the relationship between the problem and its cause. How can we be confident to detect the true causes? We rely first on observations. What negative influences have you observed in our bakery? I classified my observations to these process components: input, activity, method, and resources. Inputs are all material or immaterial objects that are transformed into outputs or transferred from an input to an output location. Thus, you can identify inputs by the question, what is transformed or transferred? The inputs for our bakery are also objects, like the ingredients, the tin, and the cryptic order at the beginning of the video. Should taste like grandma's cookies. Since our little chef does not know what the customer's grandmother's cookie tastes like, this ambivalence increases the probability that the taste of her cookies will deviate from the ordered cookies. Please note, any input of a certain process step J is the output of a preceding process step I. Thus, the negative influence of an input in step J is equivalent to a problem of an output in step I. The activity of a process transforms an input into an output or transfers an object from an input to an output location. Thus, you can identify activities by the question, what is done or what happens? This activity can be digital, mechanical, or manual. We could observe our chef in a chain of manual activities, for example weighing the ingredients, shaping and baking the cookies, and finally delivering the tin with cookies. Surely you have observed that our chef nibbled chocolate from the ingredients and dough. These activities probably have a negative influence first on the ingredient mix and finally on the cookie taste. Please note, activities are not objects. They have no attributes and thus cannot have and cannot be a problem. But activities can trigger, transmit, and amplify problems of an output. Resources execute or support the execution of activities. Thus you can identify resources by the question, who or what executes the activity or supports its execution. Our chef, the calendar, the kitchen balance, the mixer, timer, energy, and the oven are resources of the process. Our chef executes most of the activities and thus causes all the problems. Our chef, however, is not the trigger, but an intermediate cause of problems. Although we could observe her manipulating the calendar, its wrong date displayed finally triggered the process and led to the problem cookie delivery 1 week early. This also applies to the manipulated timer setup and the extremely preheated oven. Their influences trigger or amplify the problems cookie taste bad and cookie energy waste. Only if we have discovered the last negative influence in the causal chain, we should start looking for intermediate causes down to the root causes. Please note, in practice presumed root causes are often focused too early. This, however, makes no sense if the trigger in the causal chain is unknown. Only the trigger offers a valid starting point in the search for root causes of a problem. And we can avoid finger pointing in some cases. Methods guide the resources to execute a related activity or to support its execution. You can identify methods by the question, how should the activity be executed? Methods can be digital algorithms and analog procedural guidelines like recipes, kitchen standards, and operating instructions for our bakery. We could observe our chef in a sequence of activities, but we could not detect any guiding method like a recipe. Our chef probably followed practiced habits and personal preferences. This individual method typically is a source of variation and can negatively influence the cookie taste. We could also observe that the cookies were first manually shaped and later the edges of the cookies had to be broken off to fit into the tin. This individual habit leads to the two problems: cookie diameter greater 10 cm and cookie ingredient more than 50 gram wasted. Please note, input, method, resources and activities are the sources of negative influences X on the output Y. The root causes of identified triggers can of course lie outside the focused process. The correct description of the triggers is the prerequisite for assumptions, hypotheses, measurements, and statistical tests. Wrong classifications of influences to inputs, activities, resources, and methods are, however, irrelevant for the success of a project. But these process components provide search fields for negative influences in the workplace. For a complete problem-solving cycle, two more components are necessary: effects and solutions. Maybe you have already some ideas.